The price of progress is something that's been paid by many of the places I've lived in, developed countries, or so they say. And as I'm here in Vietnam, I'm realizing that there's a price to be paid, and we've paid it. And the question is whether it's worth it. I was reading about this concept of moving factories away from China. It was specifically focused towards toy companies, and they've tried shifting away their factories from China, but they found it very hard. India, Vietnam are the two big benefactors of the issues with China, but China just has such better infrastructure. And it's easy, right? I mean, traffic in India, traffic in Vietnam is horrendous. It takes you forever, right? And the US is so fast to drive in, but so is China actually. It's very efficient. They have freeways. Vietnam has highways, whatever they're called, but they're not very fast. Because people still walk across the highways every now and then, which means, yeah, well, you know what I mean. I mean, in India, you have so many different forms of transportation. You have the tuk-tuk, you have the guy with his donkey, you have, not farm cows on the road. You just can't go so fast, right? And it's the idea of standardization and acceptance of everybody. So in Vietnam, I often get upset at fast traffic because you have these motorbikes doing every such thing. Obviously illegal, but people just give way, just accept it. You have the people going the wrong way. You're like, seriously, you're going the wrong way. Wait a minute, do you have a red light? What do you mean just going straight? You can't go, just keep on going. But they do. And almost all the time, nothing happens. People accept it. They expect it almost, right? So they are keeping high alert for these abnormal activities, right? In the US, you're like, you got an accident because the guy went down the street the wrong way. You're like, that's expected. But in Vietnam, you got an accident. There'd be accidents like all the time, because that's you have to sort of plan for those things so that happens. But they're a much more accepting society of sort of everybody, more allowing, more free, if you will. I was at the party the other night, and I made a comment to my wife, who's Vietnamese, about how come that guy wears his shoes. I mean, so there's this area that's more indoors, right, covered, tile, and then everybody takes off their shoes before they get on it. Mostly people wear slippers, right? But he just continues to wear his sneakers there. And she said, well, it's hard for him. He has shoes on. It's not so easy to slip on and off. But the whole point is, like, you take off your shoes and you want it to be cleaner, right? And he's not doing that. And he's, like, not a little kid. I mean, if you're a little kid, I mean, little kids, right? There are some kids who are a year and a half doing that. They have their clogs on, but they're like, what are you going to say, right? But he's, like, at least 20. He's an adult, basically. Why doesn't he follow these unspoken rules? But nobody said anything. He just kept on doing it, right? But I think that's the thing. They're just very accepting of society, right? And it actually makes it nicer for those people. If you're from the countryside and you go to the big city, or you're from even more rural areas and you drive in, say, Los Angeles or a big metropolitan area, you're going to have difficulties. You drive too slow, you don't know how to merge with traffic, right? You go on the freeway, you have no idea how to even get in, right? Most people who aren't used to driving in, say, California, like, oh, nobody lets you in. You're like, yeah, no. You don't understand. See, when you're on the freeway and you're merging, right? The fact that they're not actively making that gap between them and the car in front of them smaller, they're letting you in. But many people from these small areas expect them to have a huge gap. You're like, that's never going to happen in LA. But here in Vietnam, you see this lady. I saw this lady. She's like crossing. You're like, seriously? You're on the right side of the road. You want to make a turn all the way on the left. Shouldn't you be on the left side of the road? But she's probably from the countryside, doesn't know very much about driving in a bigger place, and it's going to be okay. Nothing's going to happen to her 99% of the time. People are aware, people are going to let her through, and she's going to make her way and be fine. They're okay. Even in big city, they're accepted. And I feel that's the interesting thing, right? About this idea of progress. We like to standardize. We have to get rid of these people who are lesser, these forms of transportation that are slower. You gotta go a certain speed to go on a freeway. That's just the way it is in the US. In Vietnam, there's no speed you gotta go to go on these roads. You just go whatever speed you want. And people go around you. And you could still go everywhere by bicycle, which is not true in the US, right? So, my mom, she doesn't like driving on a freeway because it's too fast. She would be okay in Vietnam. They would say, fine, you want to go 20 on a freeway? Go ahead, right? People go around you. And the thing is, it hinders progress, makes it so stuff is slower. And the question is, it's not a free thing to have progress, to have standardization, to have faster speeds of the roads. There's a cost that comes to play. Vietnamese society is just more accepting in general of all these poor people, right? These countryside hicks, these people with no manners, they're just different, and that's okay. But the US is not accepting. European countries are very developed. They don't like this sort of stuff. It's illegal, often. But what about the people who don't know any better, who are too old to learn? Where do they go in society?